Alright, part 3, let's talk about controllers. So, controller is basically a type of file where I house a bunch of functions. This is my controller in the controllers folder for my guitar table. And again, if I had more tables that I was using, I'd probably have a different controller file for each one. So, first thing, we're importing something called that we're going to name guitar service, and that's coming from our services repo, and the file is guitar.service.js. And again, this is just a name that I'm going to use to reference that file. Okay, so let's talk about create guitar. And it might be a little easier if we do this. So here on the left, I'm going to show you the route that's pointing at create guitar. And then here on the right is the controller file where I have that definition of the function. So super basic function here. It's an async function because the database transaction that we're expecting to do doesn't happen instantly, so we need to wait for that to happen. What I'm saying here is there's going to be a request parameter, and it's going to have a property called body. And again, I'm calling it rec, but that stands for request. So what I'm doing here is saying, okay, I'm going to destructure 3 things out of my request.body. So again, this tells this function that it should expect some sort of variable to be passed to it called rec. That rec variable should have a body property. And inside that body property should be 3 variables: brand, model, and strings. And this is commonly how you'd see it when it's talking to like a front end. And so I'm trying to model it off that, even though I'm not using a front end. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to do is basically call my service file, which I'm importing up here, guitar service, and then pointing at the file. So I'm calling it. So results is equal to the result, and I'm using a wait because I need to wait for that function in the service to finish before I would do anything with it. And so we're going to call the file, call the method inside the file called create guitar. You'll notice it's the same function name as this one in the controller, which is commonplace. You should do that. And I'm going to pass that function 3 things: the brand, model, and strings that I've already destructured out of the rec.body. So, and this would vary a little bit in a real world application. You'd probably throw an error here instead of a console log. But for intents and purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to console log that something went wrong. So, results again stands for a successful outcome of this function. So if it's successful, I'm going to return the results. And so again, results is the result of this function, which we'll look at in the next part of the video for services. And if something goes wrong, I want to know that something went wrong and some basic information about where. So I'm going to log unable to create guitar. That tells me, or some user, or some other developer, okay, something went wrong in the create guitar function, or perhaps in the service file with that function. Something kind of helpful for future you when you're debugging. Okay, so a lot of these are very similar. You're just going to follow a similar structure. You're going to extract whatever variables you need out of the request coming into this controller. You're going to pass those variables to whatever service function corresponds with this controller function. If it's successful, you're going to return those results. If it's not, you're going to send some sort of indication about what happened and generally where it went wrong. Okay, and you'll see these are all very similar. Once you do this a couple times, it'll be really easy. And then finally here I export all the functions inside this controller file so that it can be used in other files referencing it. For instance, this route file needs access to all these functions, so I need to export them.